what a German looked like. And they thought, Jocelyn Srulke, they thought it was a good idea because he could help them bring back some other things that they wanted to bring back. He could carry them, and so they accepted. Sure, why not? Let's go. So the three of them, one midnight, and this, my uncle Yosel remembers exactly the date of that. It was the 25th of November. At midnight, they decided to go back to Rubiesho. And they did exactly what they were supposed to do. They waited for the guard to pass, and then they knew that they had half an hour. So as soon as the guard had passed, the first guard, they took this little canoe they had and started to go to the river. Where they were nearing the river, there was a voice telling them to stop in Russian. So they had to stop. There was another guard coming right behind the first one. Was not planned, was not expected, nothing. And he took them prisoner, and he led them to some barracks or whatever it was, the three of them. And from there on, they could never go back to their house. They were sent from one place to another and ended up somewhere in Azerbaijan and Tashkent, very far away places. But that's another story. The guy, the owner of the canoe, the peasant that had had lent them the canoe, was set free, and he went back and told the story about what had happened, because otherwise the people that stayed behind, they would know. So he told the story. So they didn't know. That was the last they knew about their mother, about David, and about Bailey. That was it. They finally had to go to Vladimir Zvolinsk anyway. So they packed up their belongings. My father, my mother, my aunt Hane, myself, and my sister to be born. And they went to this lady's house, the cousin, yeah, and to stay there. Eventually, my sister was born, my rash disappeared, and since there were so many refugees in that city, the Soviet authorities decided to clean the city up. They didn't want any more refugees, so they picked them up, put them into trains, and sent them inside the Soviet Union. We, for example, were sent to Siberia. They sent people all over the place. So everybody that could not prove that was a resident of that city had to go. So we knew that someday they would come and pick us up and take us to the train station. We knew that. But there was the question of my aunt Hane, the youngest sister of my mother, because they did convince her to stay there. They said, why are you going to go to the Soviet Union? You don't know where they are going to send you. Maybe they send you to a faraway place. Why don't you stay here with us, and we'll tell everybody that you live here, you're a resident, and no problem. And she finally, they convinced her and she accepted. She decided to stay. So one day they came to pick up my family, and they took them to the train station, and Hannah stayed behind. That same day, during the night, she had second thoughts. She didn't like to stay by herself. She was very close to my mother. She depended on her a lot, and she wanted to stay with them. So as soon as in the morning, at the break of dawn, she just couldn't resist anymore, and she went to the train station, hoping that they had not left, and she was very lucky, and they had not left yet. So she came back into the family again, and she left with us, and we were sent, as I said before, we were sent to Siberia. Now, a year later, more or less, when the Germans started the war against the Russians, the first place, this was called, if I'm not mistaken, this was called the Operation Barbarossa. They came through this place, the Germans, all the Jews were exterminated, and that's what the way into the Soviet Union was for the Germans. All the Jews were exterminated. If Hannah had stayed there, she would have been exterminated also. So she saved her life because of that decision. So in order to summarize a little bit what we were talking about, the decisions, yes, about decisions. Well, the first decision, my grandmother Rivke, she decided to stay in Rubieszów and wait for the war to end up. She was exterminated. Duvet had a chance to go to the Soviet side, and as a matter of fact went there. He crossed the river, but decided to go back and stay in Rubieszów. He didn't want to move because he had 3 small children, and he thought it was too much of a trouble. He was exterminated with the whole family. Baile, we don't know anything what happened with Baile, but she was exterminated, that we know, because she stayed in Poland with her whole family. There were 6 children and her husband. Yes. My father and mother and myself, we saved our lives because we went to the other side. Shlomo, we don't know anything about him. Just for the adventure, he decided to go back to Rubieszów with my uncles, and he was caught by the Russians and sent. We don't know where. We don't know whether he's living or he's dead. Nothing. We know nothing. But anyway, his life changed absolutely, completely from that moment on. And finally, my aunt Hanne, the youngest of the sisters of my mother, the fact that she wanted to stay with her and she didn't want to remain back in Ludmir, saved her life, and she survived the war, and she came over to Colombia with us after the war.
Now, Cyril and Yusel, you haven't mentioned what happened to them on. They were taken.
That's another story. That's a long story.
But they did.
They survived. Yes, Yosel and Srulke survived the war, but it's a longer story, but they did survive the war.
So, Moises, appreciate hearing that story.
Okay, sure. That was very nice. Thank you for listening to me.
Anytime.